Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Live's Falcons at 49ers post-game special, our coverage of that miraculous last-second Falcons win that basically no one saw coming. And if you do, I'm sure there are some people out in the desert that would love to get your name and number and ask you some more predictions. But as you guys could tell, the Falcons did manage to pull off the win in that game. That was one of the more exciting finishes in recent memory. It looked like probably Austin Hooper should have got the touchdown, but it was okay because Julio Jones came back and was like, "No, it's okay, I got this," and then he got the touchdown. Was ruled over the plane. Falcons end up winning basically on that play, and then they throw salt in the wound by getting a touchdown off of the final kick return as well. So to join me tonight to wrap up this game is Evan Burchfield. You know him at Evan Burchfield on Twitter. So Evan, I know you really enjoyed the end of this game. How was it for you to see the Falcons scrape out this victory from the jaws of defeat, almost literally?
Yeah, that was nuts. And if your heart isn't just mine's still pounding. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I was sitting there watching, if you want to break down the first part of it, it's like the Hooper thing. I can see why they would say that's not. In my opinion, I thought he had the ball. It hit the ground, but it didn't move at all. It came loose when he rolled over, but that wasn't it was still a catch up until he rolled over. So in my opinion, that was a touchdown. But I can see why the NFL is, they've made some really bad calls. Why, especially in this game, why they would say that wasn't. And then the Julio thing was just, it was nuts because the 49ers were literally rushing the field. They were all game over. And I saw it on when it first happened. I'm like, he got close to breaking the plane. And then when they showed the replay, it was clear as day that he broke the plane. It was just nuts. Because, honestly, me, you, I'd imagine everybody in this chat watching. Maybe the most optimistic of us would say we would be competitive. But I don't think anybody predicted us to win. Hell, in our staff picks, James, bless his heart, he always picks the Falcons, even if they're on a bye week, he'd still pick them to win.
Right.
And he had them winning. Everybody else had them losing, I believe. And sure enough, it happened.
Yeah.
Just nuts. In going against Kyle Shanahan too. In the 49ers, yeah, they had injuries, but we were without Calvin Ridley. We have our own injuries.
Yeah. We lost several defenders in the game.
So I'm not going to let them get away with, they had some injuries. We had some injuries. It's nuts. That was a nuts ending. And then I think you mentioned the kickoff, getting the salt in the wounds, getting the 49ers basically lateraled it into the end zone for us.
Oh, hey, it's Corey. What's up, Corey?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I invited
No, it's cool.
Who dares summon me with optimism?
Oh, no, I thought we banned him from the show. How do you get back in here now? How are you doing, Corey?
I am good. It's my first appearance this season. So
Welcome back.
Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Whatever we can work it in, that's what we got to do. Yes, so I know, Evan was just waxing poetic about the end of that game. I'm sure you have similar feelings. How did you take the end of this magnificent performance here?
What just happened? What was that?
It was the revenge game on Kyle Shanahan. They were getting revenge.
Yes.
Yep.
I guess it's one of those things where we've blinked. They're 4-2 after the bye. They've been one of the best teams in the NFC. Almost. That's insane. And I guess this is one of those games where you kind of try to personify exactly what you've seen happen, and I don't know, it's weird. I don't really know what to think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I had mixed feelings about it because it's like, there's definitely the Chase for Young crowd that was hoping more for a loss, obviously, and then there's the whole it's helping the Saints in a big way for us to beat the 49ers, so there was that angle to it as well. But it's just you can't really root against the team, and I just can't. I can't bring myself to be like, oh no, I don't want them to win. Even rationally, the game is meaningless in terms of is it going to help them in the playoffs and is it going to help their draft pick? No, but you can't dismiss what it can do for a team to win, to get these feel good wins. I mean, they do matter. It's not necessarily in a way that's easily quantifiable by stats or draft picks or something like that, but getting these wins does matter, and I'm sure it matters for Dan Quinn, who's probably desperately hoping to win out and save his job, which would be I think would upset a lot of people, including a lot of staff members, just because of how bad the first half of the season was. But I mean, this is what Dan Quinn does every single season. Is they'll struggle out of the gate, except for 2015. That was the exception. They'll struggle out of the gate, and then they'll finish really strong, and you'll be like, oh, well, they looked pretty good to close out the season, so maybe, maybe this team could be good the next year, and then the same thing happens again. So, it's tough. It's a conflicted game for me, but I enjoyed the win. Regardless of what else happens this season, it is nice to have beaten, arguably the two best teams in the NFC, and have taken, the Seahawks. We were right there to beat them as well. So it just really drives home how much of an enigma this team is, because they clearly have the talent to hang around with the three top seeded teams in the NFC, and then they just go through these lulls where they look terrible. And, I do think that has to do with coaching, but I know some people have other opinions on that. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of this game a little bit. Yeah, Blizz818 says the Falcons are the best crappy team in 2019. I agree. They're definitely the best losing. I think they're the best team with a losing record, probably. But it's just such a weird season. But, let's talk about the nitty-gritty of this game, because, to me, going up against the 49ers defense, which is, the number one pass defense in the NFL, I think people have mentioned it. Matt Ryan is now 5-0 against the number one pass defenses that whenever he plays them. And, they were obviously missing, some secondary players, and they still had that pass rush, though, and that pass rush did get to Ryan on occasion. But for the most part, the offensive line played well. This is back-to-back weeks now where we've had Chris Lindstrom at least partially in the lineup, and that pick seems to have been a good one because Lindstrom looks really good. He's definitely brought stability to the line. I believe the one sack that was given up was Wes Schweitzer. So there may have been more than one sack. I remember one where Wes Schweitzer got bulldozed, but that was impressive to me. Who were some of the offensive players, or what were some of the things you guys noticed on offense? I'll let you take the first crack at it, Evan.
Mine's just more of a large comparison. I was looking at the stats, and it's funny how identical both teams' offenses were this game. You look at the quarterback position. Matt Ryan went 25 of 39. Garoppolo went 22 of 34. Ryan had 210 yards. Garoppolo had 200, and then Ryan had 2 touchdowns. Garoppolo 1. And then you look at, Julio Jones had 20 targets. That's insane. 13 receptions, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kittle had 17 targets, 13 receptions, and exactly the same amount, 134 yards, but he didn't score. It's nuts. We basically force-fed Julio, which, worked, because the run game wasn't anything, actually Matt Ryan was probably our best runner. Freeman had 12 carries, 39 yards. They have a great defensive front, so It's not shocking. But you look at the offense, it all went through Julio Jones. 20 targets. The next highest was Russell Gage and Hooper, both had 6 targets each. But yeah, it starts and ends with Julio Jones on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, very impressive. I agree with what you said there. Corey, anything on offense that stood out to you in today's game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Evan put it really nicely. Like, how lucky are you to have Julio Jones? I mean, I feel like this offense has been. This is the weirdest year for the Falcons offense that Matt Ryan's been here. This has been the strangest. Like, what are they doing? Every single week, it feels like a new offense shows up. One week, they score like 40 on the Panthers. The next week, they can barely get a field goal against like the Buccaneers. It's like, I don't know, like, what's going on. I'm not big on Cutter 2.0 at all. I think
Yeah.
his return has been very, very, very disappointing. But I think, it's like people always kind of were a couple of weeks ago, you're kind of in that doomy gloomy mode after like that Bucks game or something where it's like, well, I guess they really are back to stinking. What are they going to do? And the whole time I've kind of thought, well, the future's uncertain, but the talent is there. And I think that today is a really nice example that, like, even on the offensive line, they've got the personnel to win games like this. Like, Matt Ryan is still playing really well. I know it's hard to kind of focus on a lot in a season like this, but he's had a really nice year, all things considered. And Julio Jones always plays well every time he's on the field. I love what Russell Gage has been doing. Austin Hooper is back and looks fine. Kevin, you mentioned Chris Lindstrom, who I think has been a big reason why they've won these last two games, because that offensive line plays a lot better with stability at that right guard position. It's kind of a frustrating thing to kind of be like, well, where's the play calling? Like, where is the brain trust to make sure this offense stays like this? But hey, against what's probably been the best defense maybe in the NFL this year, scoring, I guess, eventually 29 points, I guess, but the Zacchaeus touchdown there at the end. I mean, it's pretty incredible to think about just how roller coaster this can be. And I guess we'll talk about the man in charge here soon enough, but offensively, like, this is what they're supposed to do. I mean, you don't have to score 30 every game. This is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and it's just been a bizarre season, and it was a bizarre game too. I mean, the Falcons definitely got hosed on defense with several roughing the passer calls that, one was by the letter of the law, a penalty. The other one, the second, the Grady Jarrett one, that was just a terrible call. That one of the roughing the passer, I mean, both of those roughing the passer calls, I believe, led to points for the 49ers. So, you take those away, and those are correctly called, especially the second one. This is a game that the Falcons are probably leading for the majority of the time. I mean, it was really kind of insane that basically the only thing the 49ers could do on offense against the Falcons was to throw the ball to George Kittle, and eventually that even fizzled out late. And then, they had Raheem Mostert, who I thought ran well throughout the game, but none of their other receivers were really making any plays. Deebo Samuel did get a couple catches, but it was just a really rough game for them. And obviously their offensive line is totally, shell-shocked at this point. I think they've lost 3 starters, maybe more, over the course of the season. I think McGlinchey's back. He was out for a time. But, Weston Richburg, their center, I think went out last week. So they got Ben Garland, Falcons' favorite, Ben Garland, starting at center. And, as expected, Grady Jarrett worked him over pretty well. But I guess, the offense I thought played well enough. We'll talk about the coaches here later. But I would say that I think defensively maybe it was even more impressive against, what is, one of the NFL's better offenses, and against an offensive coordinator who we know as one of the smartest. And Dan Quinn, called him the hardest offensive mind to scheme against. That's why he hired him in the first place. And, it seemed like they had an answer for just about everything except George Kittle. So, Corey, I'll let you take the first shot now. At the defense, who were some players maybe that stood out to you from today's game?
Well, Kevin, you put it out on Twitter, and I'm glad someone's finally saying this, but Bleeder A. Wilson is always good when he goes in there. I mean, I think that he's been consistently one of those guys where it's like, every time someone tends to go down, obviously they're without Trufant for the rest of the year, but he plays pretty well. And, I mean, obviously, you bring up guys like Grady. I thought Deion Jones looked good today. I mean, Vic Beasley was getting sacks, which is what you really want for him making $12 million. But, I just want to speak to the cohesion, because I don't think the defense was like lights out, but I think that they were good enough, and considering where they have been this year, like anytime this unit plays together, which I think they've done a lot more of past the bye week, because I think that defense, like I think it was like Brian Baldinger or something was putting videos out like weekly about just how miserable they were being coached and how they were playing. And then, like, whenever Quinn gave up the play calling to Morris and Ulbrich, it's just been a much more cohesive unit, which is disappointing because it makes you think that when Quinn took over the defense, that it really was kind of a harbinger of doom for that first half of the year. But, the fact that they're playing together and they're winning games and making plays on defense, and they're just not like a open door for teams just to kind of walk through, like, a huge improvement. And what more can you ask for after that start? I think that's the thing. It's like anything that happens in the second half of this year, you just don't take for granted, because obviously they're not a playoff team very much. Like,
right,
they're just going towards the end of the year trying to play for pride. And I don't know, this reminds me a little bit of that 2015 team at the end when they beat the Panthers. They took that undefeated season away from the Carolina Panthers, and they played really well and they looked really nice there. I mean, Dan Quinn has been a marvelous coach in December. I mean, his December records are always really, really strong. And I don't know why this team always does this under Quinn, but it's like this defense in particular to me is like playing much more smartly. They're playing much cleaner play. Like, I know the reffing was really bad today, and there's some weird calls here and there, but I mean, for as how hodgepodge they've been this year, like, I'm impressed with how they played.
Yeah, me too, certainly. And I think you definitely are onto something there. It's disappointing that Quinn takes control of the defense and they look really awful, and then he gives up control, and they've had a much stronger second half of the season, which leads me to believe that if Quinn were to stay, it would probably be someone. Raheem Morris is probably looking at a promotion to defensive coordinator for his coaching. And it could be, I really don't think that Quinn is like a bad defensive coach. I think it's that he can't handle being a head coach and a defensive coordinator and all this other stuff. Like, he just can't handle that. And, that's probably a negative mark against him. Clearly there are some head coaches that can kind of walk and chew gum with multiple hats. Maybe he's not one of them. But, if Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich can kind of combine to call a good defense, maybe it's okay. And then, I definitely think we're going to see some coaching changes, but, it'll probably be on the dirt cutter side of things, in my opinion. But, Evan, I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity to get a word in about the defense here if you had anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive that, Kittle's, probably the best tight end in football right now. Either him, Kelsey, Hooper, before he got injured, was posting top 2 tight end stats. But Kittle, there's like those guys and then everyone else basically. So he was going to get his regardless. That's a ton of yardage though.
Yeah.
But everybody else pretty much got shut down. Their best receiver right now, you could argue, is Samuel, and he only had 1 reception for 29 yards.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Sanders, who they traded for a couple weeks ago, like before the deadline, 2 receptions for 9 yards. Like, the defensive backs did tremendously. But Kittle was, just like I was saying, Julio was our offense. Kittle was their offense. It seemed like every pass was going to him. But Mostert's their best running back, even though Tevin Coleman had like a pretty solid day, but I think many of us probably saw that coming. They usually seem to play better when going against former teams and stuff like that. But I was impressed with the defense overall. I don't know what it is. It's kind of cheesy to say, but it's like these kind of games, it's like their energy comes out and they seem like they really, I don't know what it is. Some games it looks like they got hit in the mouth and they're defeated, and that's that. It kind of had that feel when Kenyon Barner fumbled on the punt return or whatever it was. It kind of looked like, okay, well, this game's over. Everybody looks defeated, but impressively, they were able to fight back, which, as Falcons fans, we almost never see. Usually something like that pretty much ends the day, especially against a team who only had 2 losses at the time. I don't know what else to add. It's one of those games where, even if you wanted the team to lose for draft picks and stuff, as a fan in your core, you can't help but be excited over something like that.
Yeah, it was just a super exciting game.
Well, it's been a bad year.
It has been a bad year.
It makes you feel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you feel some sort of way about this game. That's we haven't felt much over the past several weeks. Let's be honest about that. And then so this one is a nice change from that. But yeah, I mean it really we're gonna see what happens over these final two games. The Jaguars did find a way to win this week, so maybe there'll be a little bit more game than we initially thought. I may be attending that game, and as you guys know, the Falcons are 3-0 when I cover the game in person, so we probably are going to lock up a win there. But that Bucks game, we'll see what happens there. But I mean, I do think that if Quinn does go 7-9 and finishes this second half of the season like 6-2 or whatever that's going to be, the chances of him staying are probably higher. I'm still not convinced it's the right decision, but look, if they fire Cutter, that's the one decision that has to be made, like regardless of what else happens. Like if they keep Cutter, they're not going to go anywhere next year because he's brought this off. This offense had so much talent, and he has like brought it and made it into like an NFL average offense, and it's just sad to see. So he needs to get out. So if they bring in a good offensive mind, that's like the minimum of what they need to do. If they don't make any changes to the coaching staff, I just don't think that's possible. I don't think after a season as disappointing as this, you don't make any changes anywhere. I think we all kind of believe that Dimitroff is probably the one that's going to fall on the sword this year, which will be impressive because it will mean that Quinn has now outlasted like all of his coordinators and now his general manager and probably another offensive coordinator. So, this might be unprecedented in terms of like NFL head coaches if he does manage to survive, but Corey, I think you are more on the side of keeping Dan Quinn. Is that correct?
Well, here's the thing. If you've been following my work with the Falcoholic over the since last year, I've been one of the obnoxious people banging the drum for Dan Quinn. I remember last year, the same day that they got destroyed on Thanksgiving against New Orleans, I ran a piece that said, "Let's be thankful for Dan Quinn." It really didn't go over very well at all. And I hit a point mid-season this year where I was kind of like, maybe this is not what the team needs in terms of keeping Quinn. And I love Dan Quinn as a person. I love what he brings to a locker room, but like this is his 5th season. Sometimes the NFL is like a very high transition league. There's just a lot of people that can build something like, look at Sean McVay and just how he was like 2 years ago the future of the NFL, and now the Rams are struggling. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, this is just an every single year league. You just never know how things are going to go. And one of the things with Dan Quinn is that like what he does well as a coach, I don't think is ever going to go away. I don't think you're ever going to have players that don't enjoy playing for him. I don't think he's ever going to foster an unhealthy culture. I don't think he's ever going to not bring in high quality players on the defense in terms of the draft, I guess, unless they're pass rushers. But, it's like everything, he does well, and then the things he doesn't do well. Like, I don't always think he's the best situational game coach. We always have struggled to find someone to replace Shanahan. There's a potential of being on the third person to do that if they fire Cutter, which I think is probably what will end up happening, at least in one way, shape, or form. It's a very hard thing to really discern, but I think when you look at the post-bye, they're 4-2, the wins that they have, like, Arthur Blank loves Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's never gotten to work with a GM that he's chosen, and I don't know. I think that while I was kind of convinced there for a while, especially if they had lost today, like, yeah, I think that they'll end up making pretty sweeping changes. Between me and the wall, I don't think this is going to be a very strong coaching cycle. I don't really know if the coaches that are potentially out there are going to be like what the team will want. And I was kind of sold on Greg Roman until Kevin kind of mentioned that they do run that West Coast offense, which would be a pretty drastic change for Matt Ryan and everybody involved. And I don't imagine that would end up being a direction they go in. So I think that right now Quinn is probably a lot safer than he has been. I don't think there's going to be a lock until Black Monday rolls around and we know where this is going to go. But I think he's making a lot of cases for why this team is playing for him. They don't ever give up. He fosters a very healthy culture, and I think that's something that a lot of people take for granted, and that keeps people in jobs. I think when you look at a guy like Mike Tomlin, who I think is a really good coach, I think the culture he builds in Pittsburgh is why they withstand a lot of things. And sometimes it is harder to like make a change and see yourself get over that change as it is to just withstand what's going on with someone you know can do the job. So I think that Blank is a very reasonable person, and I trust whatever decision he makes. But yeah, I think that Quinn actually has a pretty good chance of staying now.
Yeah, I mean, some of it will certainly depend on how the rest of the season plays out. I mean, if they get blown out by the Jaguars or something, you know, that could be that could be the tipping point. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. And yeah, I mean, I think they have to get rid of Cutter, but then the question is like, who do you bring in to bring back the Shanahan style offense? You know, do you hire some assistant? Do you promote someone internally? I mean, it's just it's tough to say how that's going to go. So. I guess we'll see there. Maybe they'll go after someone from college. I mean, I don't know. But what do you think at this point, Evan? Now that we're, you know, Week 15's in the books, they beat the 49ers. Have your thoughts on Quinn's, you know, ability to stay the coach? Have they changed at all? Or are you still kind of – I know you've kind of been on the fence, so.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been on the fence more because I understand why he would be fired. But like my heart wants him to stay just because I have like a older NFL look on it, I think. I mean, because they used to, it'd be normal to go like 7-9 and you wouldn't just get canned. Where now it's like, you know, if you don't make the playoffs, it's like, oh, maybe you should be fired. And I know, you know, fans have their opinions on other stuff aside from Quinn, like Cutter and stuff like that. But I mean, I hate to make the comparison, but you look at like a team like the Saints, for example. They went, I think from 2014 to 2016 or 2017, they went 3 straight years of going 7-9, and then they've been in the playoffs ever since. And I'm not saying the Falcons are going to turn it around next year and just start making the playoffs and stuff like that. But I mean, it's possible. I think the only reason you should fire your head coach, aside from, you know, controversies or stuff like that, is if they're going like 2-14 or something. I mean, that a coach should be able to win you at least 6-7 games, like a good coach. And that's with a bad roster. Now, I'm not saying we have a bad roster or anything. We do have some injuries. I think the problem is we need, and I don't know the answer to it. If Dan Quinn knew he was on the hot seat, like the very hot seat entering the season, and he knew it was pretty much going to need a good offensive coordinator, I don't understand why Dirk Cutter was brought in, even after today's win. Like, Dirk Cutter, in my mind, is the one that needs to be gone. I also think Dimitroff needs to be gone, and I've been saying that all season, because I think he's more to blame for the Cutter stuff, and not to mention the offensive line, how that was handled in free agency. You know, I don't see how you get rid of the players. Love Dan Quinn. As Corey was saying, it's more of a culture thing where, you know, it'd be totally different if the team had one win, but they have looked, I mean, you saw it today, even with the injuries the 49ers have, they played a great game. We have our own injuries, as I mentioned earlier. Like, it's not like we were full health and they were, you know, they benched their quarterback or something. We went into San Francisco and beat them. And the refs were even affecting the game. I hate to blame the refs, but I mean, it was clear as day on many calls. I don't know. I mean, right now I was on the fence, I guess, but that, like I said, it was mainly because I could understand both sides of the fence or yards, whatever. But I mean, I've wanted Dan Quinn to come back. It's just I understood why he would be fired. Now, I mean, I'm not so sure because today was a statement win. I mean, that was a great team. That was a team that what was it, last week the Saints scored probably like 40-something against.
Yeah.
We played really good football today. I don't know. I mean, it's right now it's so hard to process because I would have bet everything I had we would have lost today's game. And the team just looked energized, like they really wanted to win, and good for them. I know the playoffs are far out of reach, and, you know, they have been for weeks pretty much, but they are not giving up. And, you know, it's hard to not respect that, and it starts with Dan Quinn, I think. So I'm on board with Dan Quinn coming back. The Cutter and Dimitroff situation, I think, is more where I have a problem. but we'll have to see what they do there.
Yeah.
I know Arthur Blank loves Dan Quinn, and that's the only reason he's still on the team and wasn't fired like during the bye week when everybody wanted him to be fired. So we'll see. I mean, there's not we can really do right now. It's gonna, as you mentioned, it's gonna be determined. If the Jaguars blow us out. But I mean, it's hard to think today didn't help Dan Quinn's case for remaining as the head coach next year.
Yeah, it certainly did. And I think you can't just run it back and go into next season with everything the same as it was this year. Like, I think you have to make some sort of change. And I think that at this point it seems like it might be pointing towards Dimitroff being the one on the way out, and hopefully Cutter. We'll see. And if they make those two moves, I think that there's a chance, it could be okay next year. But if they don't make any moves and they're like, all right, we're just going to run it back, like, I don't think that is going to be something that works very well. And, I think Arthur Blank has to feel the pressure too, because he's seeing these empty stadiums on Sundays, and, that's something I don't think he can tolerate. And, if he doesn't, you shouldn't make decisions based on, like, what the fans think. Everybody knows that. Like, as much as we all would like them to just listen to everything we say, we usually don't. We don't have the right take a lot of the time. All right, like sometimes it might be the hot take, but it's not the right take. If teams fired a coach every time a fan said you should fire the coach, like there would be a coach firing every week on every team. So we can't do that. But he has to. I think he knows that he has to do something to give people hope for next year. Like, if we just run it back and he's like, all right, you just have to trust the process, like, that is not going to inspire a lot of confidence among the fan base. So you do have to do something, but maybe it doesn't have to be as sweeping as we, maybe thought earlier in the season. But, these next two games, it's going to tell us a lot, I think. Obviously, this is the crown, beating the Saints, probably the crown jewel just because of the, everything that goes into that game. But beating the 49ers, just a great team win against a very oppressive opponent. And I think it does show us that this team is not that far away from contending. They're really not that far away. Like, and that's honestly how it is with a lot of teams. Like, the difference, I think there's a saying out there, it's like the difference between 7-9 and 10-6 is, a couple of plays here and there. And I think this is a team that, could be an example of that next year, to bounce back if they make the right moves. And a great draft it could change everything. They've got that extra second round pick. They're probably going to be in line for multiple 2021 comp picks, depending on what happens. With Vic Beasley playing well, his value is going up. That could potentially net a higher pick. Devondre Campbell's playing better. His value could be going up as well. Those are two potentially good comp picks in 2021. And, over the next 2 years, we could see this team really get on the right track if the drafting is there, and a lot of that is probably going to come down to who the general manager they decide to bring in for Dimitroff is, and that will be a key thing here with Matt Ryan in the final part of his career, the next 5 years or so with him and Julio. That's probably going to be the twilight of his career, and this is their window. So key moments here for this franchise, for this team, and we will see what happens there. Either of you guys have any final closing takes before we wrap up tonight?
Just a shout out, Julio Jones. We posted about it, and you can read about it on the Falcoholic. But he moved into second most yards in a career through 9 seasons. I think something like that.
Nice.
He passed Jerry Rice, and Torrey Holt has I think like 100 more yards or something right now. So by the end of the season, surely Julio will be the fastest receiver, or fastest with most receiving yards or something. I don't know. You can read about it on the Falcoholic, but that's if anybody was thinking he wasn't a Hall of Famer, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So
impressive stuff there. Anything else you want to get in, Corey, before we wrap up?
Well, I wasn't planning on really spending all that much time watching this team next week, but now I feel like, sure, that's fine. Actually, I went to the Titans game today to see the local team, and then, of course, they lose, like they always do, and they're beginning to look well. But I think this is just kind of a nice little message to remind all of us that anything can happen at any moment in the sport. And I think a lot of us probably thought that game wins like this were pretty much out of reach. But I remember that Saints game when they just went in there and just freight trained the Saints, who a lot of people thought were like the best team in the NFL or whatever. Like, anything can happen. And I think that's why it's always really important to like give time and be patient, because I think patience at times is a lot of what keeps great franchises great and keeps bad franchises continuously bad. Falcons are a good franchise. I know that the past 2 years have been really rough in terms of where we have been, but they're a good franchise. They have a good owner. They're not dumb. I think that they're going to probably be a bit more patient with this season than a lot of people expect. And obviously they got to fill seats, and that's Kevin, you put it right on the money there. They've got to get people in the building. The attendance is very bad for this new stadium. So they're going to have to do something in the offseason to get people interested, whether it's a splashy trade or some sort of maneuvering on the coaching staff to get someone interesting. But I am pretty sold right now on this idea that anything is possible, and I think that that's kind of the future. And that's not a bad thing. I think that anything being possible means that things you didn't think could get better will get better. So I think that there is some optimism to be had, I guess, for where things could go. We don't have any certainty for where any of this is going, but
that's true.
I feel better about things through one play to Julio Jones than I did if they had lost. So
yeah,
there are good things that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, you look at 2015. Everyone, I think, was quite pessimistic after that season. Everyone was talking about firing Shanahan and all that. And then 2016, they come out, steamroll the NFL with one of the best offenses the world's ever seen. So we don't truly know what's going to happen if you get the right pieces in. The key to that year was the draft, obviously, and they really need to get the right offensive coordinator in here. They need to go back to that zone scheme system. They need to go back to the Shanahan style offense. Let's get out of here with this four-vert stuff. Stop asking your offensive lineman to protect. In this NFL on that deep stuff. It's too hard. Okay, we don't need to try that hard. We can do easier plays. All right. But yeah, I agree with you there. We will. I don't think they're as far off as a lot of people think. So. We'll see what happens in 2020. All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to thank my guests this evening. First of all, Mr. Corey Woodruff making his first appearance of the season. I believe you're still at Corey Woodruff and 2 numbers 47.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Nailed it. So yeah, you can follow him there. Anything you're working on, Corey, that you want to plug?
I'll have a column this week, so be sure to read that. I didn't expect to be writing what I'm probably going to write, so, I'll leave some suspense there. If the things I write give you suspense in life, hey, I'm glad to help.
Absolutely. So definitely check out Corey's, as yet TBD, column. So that'll be good stuff, I'm sure. The takes will probably be bad, but I mean, that's why we read Corey. That's, he gives us our weekly dose of bad takes. You got to get him somewhere. So.
Trademark.
Yep. Also with us tonight, Evan Burchfield, at Evan Burchfield on Twitter. Evan, anything that you're working on?
I just finished the tweet recap. It just basically covers the game via tweets from Twitter from different people. It's kind of funny, but
yeah.
So that'll come out on Monday, and then so just everybody watching, regardless of whether you were pro Dan Quinn or fire Dan Quinn or more focused on the draft, just enjoy this week. I mean, This was an amazing win. Something literally none of us expected. Just enjoy it. Like, who cares about anything else? Just at least enjoy Monday.
Yeah. Victory Monday.
At least you could do. Yeah. Enjoy it. Tuesday, go back to complaining. Do whatever you want. Enjoy tomorrow. Get a good night's sleep. Have fun. Whatever you're doing.
You get to enjoy all the NFL coverage this week, because everyone's going to be talking about this game. So
I mean, and the ending was nuts.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like it just ended on a kneel and that was it. Like, that dramatic comeback, and then on top of that, the way it ended with the fumble on the kick return, it doesn't get better than that, and it doesn't happen to us often, so just enjoy it.
Yeah, usually we're on the receiving end of that, so enjoy this time where we're the ones delivering that to somebody else. So that you gotta take advantage of that while we can. And just a reminder, guys, if you don't mind throwing a like at the video, that will help other people find it if they are looking for their Falcons 49ers post-game coverage. So we would appreciate that if you guys have that in you. And then if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and that will get you notifications whenever we go live, so you don't have to follow the Twitter account. But you could still follow the Twitter account at Falcoholic Live if you just want to be nice. So, that's great. And guys, I am Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. I will have a bunch of stuff this week. Tuesday we'll obviously be talking about this game. I had something on Saturday about what pick the Falcons were likely to get, but of course this win, throws everything. I did say they were probably most likely to win at least one more game, so that prediction could still be okay if they totally blow it the next 2 weeks. But check that out if you want to get an idea of what each record, whether it be 4-12. Obviously, we're not getting that anymore. 5-11, 6-10, or 7-9, and over the past 3 drafts, what those records have gotten you in terms of a pick range. So that's, I think yesterday was out there, so look for that. Otherwise, guys, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your football Sunday. Good luck to all of you in your fantasy championships. I'm sure some of you are, not championships. I guess this would be like the semifinals. So, good luck tonight. I know there's a lot of people starting players in this night game and then tomorrow as well. So good luck to you. I hope that you win all the monies. So have a good night, folks. We will see you guys. I will try to do a show on Wednesday. I'm flying for Christmas on that day, so if I get in time and the hotel has strong enough internet, then I will be doing a show. Otherwise, we'll probably have to wait, but I will keep you guys updated on that. So until then, I'm Kevin. With me is Evan and Corey, and we will see you guys in a little bit. Have a great night, folks.
See ya.